Okay.
Then as soon as it starts, I'll go ahead with the intro.
My guides told me you have to say the truth always.
Little commercial there.
Oh, is that you?
Looks
We're
like
live.
it's a commercial on the station.
With other dimension.
Yeah, we're live though. You can start.
In the middle of the desert, we saw this dark.
So hello everyone, and welcome to the Wish Alliance's Conscious Awakening series. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, founder of the Wish Alliance, and Wish stands for walk-ins, indigos, starseeds, and hybrids. We are a conscious evolution movement that is dedicated to bringing high-quality speakers to our members, among providing community and weekly meetings. Actually, we have 2 meetings per week. And so tonight, what we're going to do is a little different than what we do in our other series, because this is now. Neil, let's see.
What? Someone's playing. What's playing in the background?
Somebody's playing the video in the background. I think it's you, Sheila. Oh, it's either Sheila or Barbara.
No, I don't have anything.
What? Someone's playing. What's playing in the background?
Somebody's playing the video in the background. I think it's you, Sheila.
Oh yeah, I hear it now.
I hear
I
it.
don't.
It's
No, I think
reverberating.
it was a commercial.
Yeah, just close that window, whatever's playing behind your Zoom.
Yeah, I hear it now.
I don't.
It's
No, I think
reverberating.
it was a commercial.
It's playing us back.
Close that window,
It's echoing us.
behind your Zoom.
Somebody's YouTube is open. There.
Yeah, it's Sheila's because I muted her and it stopped.
Okay. So Sheila, shut all
Sheila,
those
just-
windows.
Yeah, just look in the background and close the window. Should be open somewhere.
Close all your servers.
All right, I think we're good now.
Nice background, Sheila.
Shut all those windows.
Yeah, just look in the background and close the window. Oh, nope, Sheila's still open.
Close all your servers.
All right, I think we're good now.
Close Chrome.
If I close this, that will stop our meeting.
All right, why don't you,
no.
Alan? Why don't you go ahead and take over, and Sheila, mute yourself until you find the video in the background. Then you can come back on.
All right.
Oh
Wait, so mute Sheila and okay. Thank you everybody for joining us on this amazing, beautiful cosmic conversations. Sheila Seppi from the Wish Alliance is bringing more and more consciousness to the field and gathering people together who are really at the cutting edge of discovering what consciousness is. And I'm so happy she's invited one of my favorite people, Barbara Han Clow, who's a real warrior, a real pioneer in this field of conscious evolution. Barbara's been an ally for years. I've met her in Santa Fe years ago, and when she started Bear and Company, which was so instrumental in getting spiritual literature out to the world. And she's been a writer for 25 years. She's an astrologer, a classical astrologer. And really, we want to focus today on her latest book. It's just called Revelations from the Source, which is the third part of a trilogy that she it's a fiction book, but she lays a lot of her astrological understanding into this book as a way of showing us a direction towards the future. Barbara, thank you so much for being here today on the show. And
Thank you, Alan. Good to see you.
yes, great to see you. You know, our little dialogues have really helped me get more solid just when it looks bleak and hopeless. It's like, you know, there we are in the trenches fighting this. In a way, it's like a world war. This is like the third year of a world war.
Yeah,
So, so what do you make of it all? Where are we going? And how do we keep the faith as far as our evolution towards this higher consciousness?
Well, that's why I wrote this trilogy. Because first of all, it starts in 2010, and I wanted to show how this whole thing developed. And so that as we get into the trenches now, which is really where we are, we're really locked in at this point into the shift out of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius. In fact, the Aquarian energy is really taking over. And then what happens with that is that people just don't know what to do with it because it's an entirely new experience. And so right now we're having a lot of problems with people in power taking over to a gross degree and making life very, very hard for us who are just trying to get along from day to day. But this is going to pass. By the way, Alan, it's always this way when we go out of one age and into the next one. And so people always talk about, you're going to reincarnate, don't come back at that point. But I think I come back every time we move from one age to the next one, as far as I can see, which is another reason I think I needed to write this trilogy.
You're one of the way showers for the new ages that are appearing on the planet. So what makes it the Aquarian? Is there a certain configuration? And of course, there's certain activations that go with those configurations for the Aquarian age?
Yeah, the Aquarian age, of course, is Aquarius, ruled by the planet Uranus. And so it takes a couple of 100 years to actually transit from one age into the next one. Although the nexus point of this transition has been, midpoint has kind of been 1998, and it's been like 1980 through 2035, 2034, something like that. And so we're at that real major turning point. And so what tends to happen is transits that have Uranus as a major factor tend to trigger a lot of stuff. And so that's what happened during 2021. We had 3 squares between Saturn and Uranus. And those 3 squares, the last one was the day before Christmas. And I think most people watching this had a pretty hard Christmas. I know I did.
Yeah.
Boy. Let's say yippee for the holidays. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you could dump the holidays right in the garbage can, judging by this year. So those 3 transits are complete. But then during 2022, they're very close all the way through the year. And these issues keep getting triggered and re-triggered because for people to change at a radical level, it takes a lot of different kinds of experiences, emotional experiences, political experiences. So we're having them all. And
Right, so what's the transit? Uranus is transiting what exactly?
well, what happened in 2021 was 3 squares between Saturn and Uranus. Saturn rules formation and creating structures, and then Uranus rules freedom. So all the way through 2021, we had a huge struggle between freedom and control. Anybody notice?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, could there have ever been a better creation to showcase this actual archetype than the COVID, what I call the COVID crap, but we'll call the COVID.
So where do you see this taking us?
Yeah.
Well, I think that we clearly have come to a point where it's time for the individual to step up to the plate. And it's interesting that the conflict and the transition is showing itself so profoundly through public health and through allopathic medicine. Because if you look at the last maybe 70 years, we go back to the 1950s, the 1960s, allopathic medicine has gradually just taken control of our lives. And people have been gradually conditioned to do certain medical testing and certain protocols. And they've been encouraged to use a lot of drugs and a lot of surgery and stuff like that, a lot of allopathic techniques. And so we are the ones who gave over our own power. You don't have to take a pill, and you don't have to necessarily do a surgery. Of course, sometimes, obviously, you do. And so naturally, now we're coming to a power play by allopathic medicine and big pharma that's even bigger than the one that's been developing since the 1950s, which is the attempt to force the vaccination of all people on the planet and have those vaccinations registered by artificial intelligence. And that's the struggle. And the only way out of that struggle is the individual. And every person who decides to do things their own way, whatever that is. I'm not advocating vaccinating or not vaccinating. It's just that each one of us has to make choices. And so what the struggle is really about is letting somebody tell us what to do. And if you watch this closely, the struggle against people telling us what to do is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, basically the other issue that the United States is facing this year is a Pluto return, where the planet Pluto returns to the US chart, the 1776 US chart when the states were created. And the United States is basically, according to astrology, set up for a revolution during 2022 and 2023. And it's not hard to see what's going to be causing the revolution. People should go into the cities and get out on the streets and notice all the demonstrations that are building, because people don't want to be told what to do by doctors or public health or anybody else. They want to live their own lives. So that's the struggle, and it's going to be very intense this year.
Is that the symbol of the Aquarian age, is taking people's control back over their lives? Is that what you say?
Yes, the sign Aquarius and the planet Uranus is the most freedom-seeking element in the astrological chart and in our solar system. Uranus is the planet that advocates freedom, and that's it.
So when does it really settle in? We're still in this transition. When does it really, drop in to that?
It's here, Alan. It's here now. You can see it in the things that are coming up in the culture, because Uranus rules technology. And it rules artificial intelligence too. It rules all kinds of wild, creative, experimental things. And that's fine. But as human beings, the Saturn part of this dynamic is to get control of things from our own perspective and in our own lives.
Wow. So your book, the Revelations from the Source, what do you lay out there that we can learn as a collective and move forward in a new way?
Yeah, well, Alan, in my universe, I'm the author of The Pleiadian Agenda and Alchemy of 9 Dimensions, which is my most original work. And the basic thesis of those two books is that we are capable of 9 dimensions of consciousness, but we have a tendency to only live in a couple of dimensions. We exist most of the time, especially right now, in the 3rd dimension, which is linear space and time and our solid world. And then we exist a lot in the collective mind, which is the archetypal realm and the realm of collective thought. Are we okay?
So
Yeah,
the
we're good.
trilogy that you wrote kind of parallels everything that's going on now, correct?
Well, yeah. And then we're back to the book. The question was, for any one of us, what can I do? Each one of us has some kind of special gift. Somebody's
I don't know why there's so much background noise here.
somebody's taking down a curtain. I can see it up in the corner next to Peter.
Let's just mute. Can we mute everybody else, Sheila?
Yeah, I've got them muted.
Okay. So go ahead, Barbara. Sorry.
All right. So the reason I wrote the book is because all of us are capable of 9 dimensions of consciousness. And the definition of being conscious in 9 dimensions would be very Uranian and very free, because each dimension has certain qualities of information that you can utilize in order to enhance your life. And each one of them is critically important for high consciousness. And so I wrote the trilogy in order to show some very, very artistic and creative and smart people who have 9-dimensional consciousness. I wanted the reader to actually start to get into the consciousness of characters who were functioning in different dimensions. And the reason I went in that direction, I've written books about this. I've written, definitional left brain books about this concept. But in my experience, I used to teach a whole lot of workshops where we used to, Jerry and I used to, my husband, partner, we'd go all over the planet, activating 9 dimensions at sacred sites in Egypt and Mexico and Scandinavia, wherever. We just went all over the place. And so what we discovered is if people can experience different dimensions, then those dimensions start to open in their consciousness. And so then, of course, the natural place to go next was to go to fiction, where I could actually have the reader participate in 9-dimensional consciousness by reading a book. And I think I made it.
Yeah.
I wasn't
But
sure
can you
I
talk
could.
about that? Can you talk about the 9 dimensions of consciousness, what that actually looks like as we function in those dimensional realities?
The first dimension is the center of the Earth, the iron core crystal in the center of our planet. And then our planet vibrates, the center of our planet vibrates in relationship, vibrates with all of the other bodies in the universe, the planets, the galaxies, the suns, the stars. We're all in vibrational resonance. Then the second dimension is the particular expression of this cosmic dynamic resonance with the whole universe between the iron core crystal and the surface of the Earth. So we're standing on top of the second dimension, and it's called telluric because that's where the volcanoes and the earthquakes and all that. By the way, that's where the viruses and microbes come from. And the second dimension has a lot to do with what's going on with COVID, but that's a complex topic. Third dimension is we're here right now, linear space and time. Fourth dimension is the collective mind that connects all of us. And so then what happens with the collective mind is that we all participated in it. And then sometimes what happens is a collective insanity can develop. And that's what's going on right now. What we're living in the middle of right now is a typical collective insanity. And it's very important to start to identify that and learn how to navigate that. Because if you're too caught in the fourth dimension, you're cut off from the fifth through the ninth dimensions. The fifth dimension is the heart, the opening of the heart. And so right now, people are having a terrible time because their hearts are being shut down by the intensity of the collective insanity. The sixth dimension is sacred geometry. And geometry is what creates all of the forms in our solar system and in the universe itself. Seventh dimension is sound. And the eighth dimension is the divine mind, divine consciousness. Call it God if you want to. Then the ninth dimension is time. And so one of the easiest ways to understand these dimensions is to go the other way, which is we're in the ninth dimension. And the question is, what is the issue of the moment? What is the timing of the unfoldment that we're in the middle of right now, which is what we're talking about on this show. And then that question goes into the eighth dimension, goes into divine consciousness. And then divine consciousness starts bringing energy in that starts giving us guidance for the realities that we're navigating, which is what we're all seeking right now.
So if people wanted to, could they use your book, The Alchemy of the Ninth Dimensions, to begin to do some personal work right now?
Sure.
To be able to help anchor themselves more firmly in what's happening?
Sure. Yeah, Alchemy of Nine Dimensions gives the whole explanation of what I'm talking about and how to work with it. And then the trilogy plays it out in fiction with characters who are experiencing it. And so certainly people who like Alchemy of Nine Dimensions will love the trilogy. And then people who are reading the trilogy are going to do better with it.
So was it really challenging then to get into the heads of these characters and kind of explain those levels of consciousness as they became a manifestation of 9-dimensional awareness?
Well, Ellen, that's an interesting question because I don't know if you can write fiction if you think that way. And so what happened for me was I really think that I transmitted a book that I don't know where this book came from. This is some kind of incredible record for our times right now. Because often when I was bringing it in, I would just go into a trance and basically come back into normal consciousness a half an hour later with a page or two of type on my camera. So I think I transmitted this. But then where the fiction writer comes in is those characters have to really be alive. They have to be alluring. They have to be fascinating. Or you're not going to bother with this stuff. I mean, who would?
Right.
You know? And so where the real crafting comes in is to make great characters. And that was the big challenge for me, because most writers, fiction writers, spend their whole lives learning how to craft characters. But fortunately, so much about these characters was guided as it came in, that then at least I had a thread that I could take up. And also, by the way, they had distinct vibrations, just like your friends and people you know, everybody you know has a certain frequency. So as long as I could like hold on to the frequency of a given character, and there's a couple of them I just love. I love the Jungian analyst Lorenzo Giannini. And so and of course, I wanted to become a Jungian analyst. So since I didn't do it because it was too time consuming, I did it in a novel. But what I had to do is I had to embody him, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that was a fun process.
Was it difficult to go from I think you had like 15 nonfiction books then to translate over? What was the process that you used to go from nonfiction to fiction?
Yeah, thanks for that, Sheila, because what happened is in 2010, I was finished with my nonfiction work. And I think all of us know when we've brought our work in, you know, maybe something else is going to come in, but I actually don't think so at that level. So once I knew that I was finished with my nonfiction work, then I realized, oh my God, the Mayan calendar is going to end next year. And I used 2011 and 2012 for Mayan calendar dates. People argue about that, but I don't. I just use them both. And so I decided, okay, now that the Mayan calendar is going to end, because the question is, what the hell is the Mayan calendar? What was that all about? Well, what that was all about is a shifting in the ninth dimension of the time codes. We're dealing with some other kind of time code in the ninth dimension that then...
Would you say it's galactic then? Because the Mayan calendar pointed us out of a solar consciousness to a galactic consciousness.
Yeah, I think so. I do think it's galactic. And like, for example, if we go back to 1988, when Saturn conjuncted Uranus, it conjuncted Uranus on the galactic center. So we've been opening a major galactic lens ever since then. So I would say that it is a galactic lens, but the Mayan calendar is galactic also. So I think what may be going on is we may be starting to really receive knowledge from beings. I'm particularly picking up on Syrians, because the Syrians are very, very brilliant regarding the sixth dimension and sacred geometry. For example, the Egyptian culture with the geometrical pyramids is a geometrical culture. And we have lost touch with the geometry of our 9-dimensional matrix on this planet right now. If you watch closely, things are really, really chaotic because we've lost that geometry. And so I think the Syrians are coming in really strongly at the 9th dimension now. Are you picking up on any of that? Because you would, knowing you. Alan, are you picking up on that?
Alan?
Yeah.
You're muted.
I'm picking up, I mean, the Syrians, the Pleiadians, of course, you wrote the Pleiadian agenda. So it's all coming in as I feel our consciousness starts to open up to, in a way, the language of these ETs, the thought form realities that are beyond human. You know, this is the next level of integration. And I think writing it out in a novel is a clear demonstration of thought form processes of these higher levels. Was what one of your purposes, Barbara?
Yeah, I agree. And then if you look at it from an extraterrestrial point of view, which I do easily because I'm very Pleiadian, when we're in the third dimension, we're really kind of in a box, and it's really kind of hard to reach us and get in touch with us and help us expand. And so we have to expand the box by getting in touch with those higher dimensions. And so, like, if we want to be in touch with the Pleiadians, for example, you got to really open your heart.
Right.
And it's hard to open your heart right now because so many people are suffering. But we need to open up our heart more now than ever before, certainly for me in this lifetime, if you know what I mean. So we just, the novel, especially Source, all three books actually, they're sneaky because it doesn't seem like that much is going on in Ruby Crystal, the first one. Second, Aquarian Age, and then you get into Source and you just get finally slammed because you're ready, you know. But we got to open up.
Well, yeah, you've written 3 major volumes leading up to this revelation from the source. I mean, did you plan that out? Did you know it was going to be 3 and that its culmination would be at this moment in history?
Okay, that's great. Well, what I knew is I had from, I looked ahead astrologically from 2010 to now. And what I saw is our world was going to crack in 2020. And it did in March of 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, so once I realized that the time frame I was talking about was 10 or 11 years, then a trilogy made sense because it takes about 3 years to get a book written and get it published and get it out to the public and all that. So first of all, I knew there were going to be 3 books. But what I didn't know was I had no idea what they were going to be. So in May of 2011, I went to my writing room and sat down with a yellow tablet and some pens. And I just sat there and I said, okay, I want to write fiction. Give me guidance. And I was, of course, asking for the Pleiadians to give me guidance.
Right.
And then what happened is for 3 hours, I wrote out the names, ages, profession, family background, and life story of about 15 characters.
Wow.
Never heard of them, never heard of their names before. And the interesting thing about it was about 12 of them were Italian and the rest were American. So then what do? So since I love Tuscany and since I love Rome, I set the trilogy in Italy, which gave me all kinds of excuses to travel in Italy, which was great. You know what I mean? You know, so the first book, I had the characters. So what I did is when it was time to start writing, I just sat down. I didn't have a plot, and I just let them take off together. And boy, they took off. Romance immediately came up between a couple of them and the usual stuff that happens with people. So the first book was not plotted. Second book was a little bit more plotted, and Source was intricately plotted because Source had to be 9-dimensional, and therefore it had to have a very complex structure and lens in order to bring it in.
And you're still using those same characters as they go through their transitions and evolutions and awakening in a way. It's a book of awakening from the character level.
Yes, all of the characters go all the way through, and all of the issues that are coming up for them in this lifetime are deeply resolved. And that was fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
And creative,
I didn't
too.
know. Remember, when I started, I didn't even know their names. And so I was discovering them as they were discovering themselves, which was really, really, a really fun experience.
So do you feel like that you did maybe brought in some of the information from your Palladian helpers, from your guides, and that they helped you to formulate these characters?
I'm sure that my guides were really involved in that, in this. And that's why I had that feeling of writing a book. I had the sense all along of this wonderful book that I was just simply writing out. And so it could be this exists in some other dimension. I think that's possible.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
since we're multidimensional beings, maybe you were channeling some of that information in.
Yeah, it wasn't like I'm pretty, you know, channels kind of go out a lot. I'm pretty conscious all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the book, the Revelations from the Source, this is the final book. Would you recommend reading the first two as well, and to get to this third one? Right.
Yeah, each one is a standalone. I doubt that most people would just pick up Aquarian Age at this point, the middle one, if you know what I mean.
Right. Right.
But the first book gives you the real matrix and context of the characters' lives. So if you
That's
want
the
to
Revelation of the Ruby Crystal. That's
yeah,
the
that's the
first.
first one. Yeah,
The
and that
second
came
book-
out in 2015. Yeah. So if you want to know, you know, like who those people really are as personalities, that's Ruby Crystal. And then when you get into Aquarian Age, they're the
That's the
dynamic-
Revelation of the Aquarian Age, right? Is that-
Same thing, revelation of with each one.
Right.
So
Right.
Revelations of the Aquarian Age then takes all these characters that you know really well, and it starts working them out through time. And it starts. And then at that point, if you go back to 2015 yourself, okay, Aquarian Age covers 2015 to 2018. If you think back to that time, we were all being taken over by a swirling timeline. And we were all starting to feel like things were speeding up. And we were all starting to feel ourselves interweaving and going into weird places, you know what I mean? And so Aquarian Age really reflects that experience that we all had by describing what was going on in the world. And so the background in all three novels is factual and absolutely accurate.
But now it,
fictional, you know, but
I was just going to say, now it feels like we're sort of in limbo, though. There's like a stagnation of sorts. Like, where do we head from here? What is, you know, that's what it seems like. What's the direction?
yeah, okay, well, we're in limbo, all right, because we have to start steering our ships. And we're moving into this wonderful time, which is going to be really hard. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not diminishing how hard this is going to be. But the trick is to steer your ship in the middle of this, because it's almost, Alan, it's almost like after the fall of Atlantis and you had to find your way to another shore, in a sense, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so this is a really wonderful time, but it's extremely disorienting. And then the thing that I hate the most would be, I'd say, 98% of the people who are steering the ships that on the media and in the world and blah, 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 are a bunch of fools. And so, you know, we have to find a way to steer our ship in the middle of a bunch of fools. But that's how it is.
Well, so is there any guidance? I mean, your characters in the book, where do they go? Do you lead a map for the reader to guide their ship?
No. First of all, the novel ends with everybody not everybody, but the major characters participating in a really incredible multi-dimensional ceremony. And then the afterword on the book just simply is a commentary on what's going on with COVID-19 and the control of the world. But each one of us is going to have to take our own position in the middle of that, because I name it for what it is, but that doesn't mean I can tell anybody what to do.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
But how's it look for you, Barb? Are you I mean, I know you're here to promote the book and because you put so much time and effort, but what does it look like as you move forward into this next phase? What are you working on? What are you thinking about? Where's your ship pointing to?
I've reoriented myself a lot in the sense of I'm much deeper into family now, because the other part of steering your own ship is steering your own ship with your own family. So family has always been really very, very important to me, if not the first priority. But now it has to be the first priority 24/7. And that's an interesting experience for me because I'm the one who went all over the world and did all these crazy things. Now I got to be home and got to be with family. But I suspect that as those things reorganize and gather themselves together, I'd be surprised if I wasn't out there all over the planet again. I don't know.
Well,
Great.
well, I just one more question and then jump in after. But the Aquarian age is one of not just family, but the family of humans, of man. And that seems to not quite be there yet because we're still so divided that this kind of great ceremony of coming together is still waiting to happen.
Mhm.
To
Remember, it's 2,000 years long.
right.
We've got a whole lot of work to do. We've got a whole lot of work to do. All of us.
Yes, yes. Sheila, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know we talked about your transition right now, spending a lot of time with family. Did that come as a result of switching from the nonfiction to the fiction? Did that kind of shift and change you? Because I know that you said you kind of went back and examined some of your work. And so I was wondering, in examining the work, did you also like do this self-examination with your own self?
Yeah, I think we're all doing that all the way through our lives. But the family agenda became critically important as things started to deteriorate. For us, it became critically important probably about 2017, 2018 was when it really started coming on. And I think that we really need to realize how much our families are our own strengths. And I think that we're going through such an incredible level of change now because a whole lot of people ended up getting rid of their 9 to 5 jobs and they ended up getting rid of their routines and they had a lot of time on their hands. And now a lot of people out there are thinking really deeply as far as I can see.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, well, that goes along with the whole Aquarian steering your own ship because we're no longer enslaved to, some large corporations or media. We have to take back the power, each of us, and then assert ourselves in our own direction. So,
yeah, and the only way we can do it is locally and within our own friends and family. So
right.
we need to get back to that nexus of family and friends and local living, and then start to branch out from there because the corporations are falling apart. I mean, have you ever seen anything more ridiculous in your life than the battle to turn on 5G while it may keep the airlines from landing safely?
Mhm.
I mean, that is the best example yet I've seen of corporate reality just collapsing. What are they doing? They knew years and years ago what these frequencies create. I mean, they made these frequencies and devices to create it. It's unbelievable. You know,
Hmm.
I don't want to get into it, but it's just ridiculous.
Right. But as the Aquarian age really takes hold and we move out of the square between Uranus and Saturn, then the real Uranian kind of openness starts to come into play, and we have exchanges with ETs, and all that comes online.
Mhm.
Would you say we're 20 or 30 or 50, 100 years away from that?
Well, this we can look at astrologically, and it's really
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, back in 1988, Saturn conjuncted Uranus on the galactic center in 27 degrees Sagittarius. We just
Right.
had the 3 upper squares last year.
Uh-huh.
So in 2032, Saturn conjuncts Uranus on the galactic anticenter in 27 degrees Gemini.
Oh.
Now, the galactic anti-center in 27 Gemini is considered by a lot of sacred cultures and magical cultures to be like kind of a doorway into the universe. It's kind of like, I that came up in the Pleiadian agenda where the Pleiadians talked about how they talked about how kind of the Pleiades were like a jumping off point because they're close to the galactic anticenter. And then what happens is our consciousness just goes out into the anticenter and away from the galactic center. So we're really moving fast. And I think it's impossible to imagine what we'll be like as we transform and transmute through these levels.
Well, I think that's what all this race to Mars, Elon Musk, all that is a symptom of something, but they're still functioning very much Piscean and don't have the understanding of why they want to reach out to the stars,
I think it's a cover, Alan.
Oh, maybe.
Every time one of those big boys goes out there and is supposedly just going to have a little float, anti-gravity float for fun. I'm sorry, but I think they're going someplace else. And in my universe, Mars has bases, the moon has bases, Antarctica has bases. I don't think we have any idea where these people are doing. But see, again, you got to have a sense of humor right now.
Yes.
I can't remember which one of them is trying to sell tickets. I think it's probably Bezos because he's the biggest salesman of all time. And they're trying to sell tickets for people to fly to Mars. Okay, now why would you fly to Mars unless there was someplace to go? So doesn't that suggest there's bases and hotels maybe on Mars? I mean, what is this? I don't know about you, but I laugh a lot. I cry a lot too.
I don't know why anyone would want to go to Mars to begin with. It's not a very nice planet. I mean,
well, that's in my trilogy, of course, in Source, where the three very wealthy Italian gentlemen are sitting around and laughing at the idea of people going to Mars, because who wants to go to Mars when you can be in Tuscany in a great palace and eat good food,
drinking wine as opposed to sweating it out in a waterless desert planet,
And I also, I'll make an idiot out of myself, but I don't mind. I've done it for years. Another question that I ask all the time is how come the markets are going up all the time when all the economies are collapsing? I think the US, I'm not seasoning out the US, I think the Earth is running a great big marketing program for a whole lot of places in the solar system and in the galaxy. And I think that's why Jeff Bezos is involved in this and Amazon is involved in this. I think that we're trading technology. We're trading goods made on the Earth for technology. And the Earth, it's easy to make stuff on the Earth, and it's not easy to make stuff on Mars or Uranus or whatever. So I think there's a whole lot of ways to look at this.
I think Linda Moulton Howe would agree with you there because she has some, Linda, yeah, she's
I do
a little bit about this as well.
That's interesting because I just thought of it myself because I just kept watching those stock markets go up and I went like, hey, somebody must be buying something here.
Wow. So you want to open it up, Sheila?
I was just getting ready to ask Barbara, we're so honored that you're here with us tonight, and our hearts are just overflowing. I'm getting texts from everybody. They're wanting to talk to you and ask you questions. But before I do that, I was wondering, is there any food for thought that you would like to leave us with?
Is there anything that I would leave us? I think we've all got to slow down at this point and really go into the heart. I think the greatest technique we have right now in the middle of this mess is to just slow down and move into the heart. I think if we can stay in our hearts as much as possible, we're going to make the best choices. We're going to have the best time. And it's also going to be the easiest way through this.
Beautiful.
Thank you for that. That is really something we have to remember as it gets more and more intense. And, you just have to also shut off the news media sometimes. Shut off the news. It's just, you can't.
And use it as a technique, like a real literal technique. Really move your consciousness right into your heart when you're dealing with a person's pain or when you're dealing with suffering of your own. Just move it into the heart. And it's amazing how the heart will start to expand And then you expand into the geometry. And then pretty soon your reality gets bigger. You got to get out of this box.
Right. It's such a different time, I have to say, than the 80s and when you started Bear and Company and all those amazing books came out. You produced The Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak and the Jose Aguirre's book, and the that whole series was such a beginning of the Aquarian age, and now we're in it, and we're sort of at the level we wanted to get to, but it's like we're just finding our way to new territory. But I'm just thinking you're such a pioneer in the 80s when you and Jerry did start Bear and Company, and eventually sold that to Inner Traditions, but it's still quite a solid resource for people wanting to move forward into a future with people who are asking the questions we are all asking. So I
And
just
you know,
want,
publishers are, each publishing company is like a line of thought. It's a train of thought, you know. And so our purpose for Jerry and me was to start publishing paradigm breaking books in order
yes,
to break down the false paradigm. And what's been wonderful is that Inner Traditions has gone on totally, can continue the whole program. And I think it's unusual for somebody who sells their company to say they're happy, but I've been happy with everything they've done. And what's funny about it, a lot of people think Jerry and I are still there. We have been there for 20 years. I mean, they're doing such a good job that,
right.
you know,
They publish your books though, don't they? That's who's publishing?
yeah, sometimes I publish with somebody else, but yeah, basically, yeah.
Right. No, Bear and Company was really key in getting the message out there in the 80s when the whole thing was just gelling, you know, the harmonic convergence and people gathering as collective consciousness. And then here we are, what is this, 30 years later, the result of a new society that at least we have that foundation. And now we're sort of hacking our way through a wilderness there where there is nothing we can fall back on. We have to kind of make it up ourselves as we move forward, you know?
Yeah, steer our ship.
Steer our ship. That's right. Right. But as far as that opposite point from the galactic center in 2032, you think that might be a launching point for
I
galactic?
think we are going to be by 2032 and afterwards. I think we're going to be profoundly in touch with many, many places in the universe. I think it's already opening up now, and I think it's going to be exciting. And the most important thing is to not fear. And so when you move into your heart, what's your heart about? Your heart's about courage. If you just go into your heart, you won't fear. There's nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. Or you might die. Gee, what a great tragedy.
Right. Well, yeah.
What's the downside of that?
But you know, Sheila's already come back to life. You know Sheila's story, right? Do you know Sheila's story, Barbara, about her walk-in experience, about her?
No, I'd like to hear it.
Oh, it's fantastic. This is a novel, or to really. Do you want to do a brief? You want to do a brief little
Sure.
catch up for Barbara because it's so fantastic.
Yeah. Well, most of my adult life, I was a very sick person and had been diagnosed over a series of years with bone cancer, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I walked with a cane. I had erythema nodosum and sarcoidosis. I had a list of diseases and autoimmune diseases a mile long. I was a mother of 3. I was married at the time, just very, very sick all of the time. And I went to bed this way, and what seemed like to be about 7 o'clock the next morning, felt as if someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of my head, pulled me bolt upright in bed, and lightning ran through my body. And I don't know how long I was in that space, but as I started coming back to myself, my peripheral vision came in and then my frontal vision. And I found myself sitting up in bed, looking around the room. Everything was the same, but everything was different. I came in very clairvoyant and clairaudient and clairsentient with all of the clairs, but did not understand it because I had no metaphysical background whatsoever. Did not believe in past lives, yet I was being flooded with past life memories. I had never studied anything metaphysical or alternative science, any type of quantum science, but all of this information about the universe and the layout and the soul and all of this information was flooding me. And because my background was psychology, I figured that between the illness, the dysfunctional marriage, etc., that I was having a psychotic break. But within 3 months, I had left the marriage, and within another 3 months, found my first spiritual teacher who was of Hopi lineage. And in working with her, learning to shamanically travel, I was able to integrate into my body very, very quickly because I learned that I wasn't crazy because I saw people walking around my house, and I wasn't crazy because I could hear them giving me messages, or I knew things about people with never having met them. I was able to learn very quickly from my guides, which, has continued to progress. I'm the same walk-in soul, but there's more and more information, and I think that I'm continuing to pull in much more. I came from a collective of beings, and we had been out in the Andromedan universe, and we heard a cry from Gaia, and we came back, and along with other collectives had enshrouded the earth. And this was in our time, like back in the late 80s. And so we'd enshrouded the earth and was working in the earth, around the earth, everywhere, trying to feed unconditional love, ascension energy, basically working on the fifth dimensional crystalline grid. When the vibration of this body's soul cried out to be released, and from the collective, it was decided that I would come in. And so for me, to help me with my mission, I needed to bring in more of those Arcturian attributes. But within my collective, I was more in my multidimensional essence of Palladian and Arcturian and Syrian and, the Elohim and the angelic, all, wound up into one. But I think that's where all of us are, really. All of us now are at this particular point in time that we're starting to pull in much more of that higher essence, not necessarily in a walk-in way, but because we're meditating and we're working on self-improvement. So really quickly, in a nutshell, that's kind of my little story.
Isn't that
That's a wonderful story, isn't it?
it's, it's fantastic.
I have to work so hard. It took me so many years to do that. It sounds like you did that in a year or two.
Yeah, I was lucky, 6 months, and I was able to come in.
Yeah.
But it literally took me a good year just to work on the neurological system of the body to get it back up to speed, to become articulate again, to be able to do all of the things that, because even though the diseases were gone, my body was still in the trash. So I had to work, to bring that back up to speed. And so, there's still things periodically that'll come up, and I'm like, why am I even thinking that? That has nothing to do with me, but I'm thinking it. So, we must have another layer coming up. But, those first few years were pretty hard trying to clear everything. But now everything is much, much easier. And, my collective helps me constantly, tells me what to do, where to go. That's one reason that the Wish Alliance came into being. They kind of woke me up and said, this is what you have to do, and started, showing the end result. But it kind of
just think
brings us.
that's an amazing story, Sheila. That is
Yeah.
that
Well,
is,
thanks.
Thank you for that.
and
Yeah. And I did write about it, and I interviewed 15 other individuals, as well as 8 people in the field of consciousness and science. And so all of that was put together in a book called Walk-ins, The Cosmology of the Soul. And in there, I do talk about my story, but I go really in depth and about, how spirit moved me. And every time I would start to stabilize, it was, come on, let's go a little, a little further. And that's kind of where I am right now. And the Wish Alliance came into being because there are other individuals like myself out there. They may not just be walk-ins, because Wish stands for Walk-ins, Indigos, Starseeds, and Hybrids. A lot of walk-ins are angelic beings. They are interdimensional. They are all types of different beings that have come in to be here at this particular point in time. And so I want to personally thank you for the work that you've done and the books that you've written, and kind of paved the way to make it a lot easier for people, because even though you've got these fictional books, they're so rich and juicy with exactly what's going on. It feels like maybe you got a little bit more freedom to really kind of express yourself. And I want to thank you for that. And I know I'm going to open up if anyone has any questions.
I just want to mention one
Sure.
thing, that you talked about the Native American connection. And
Mhm.
Barbara, do you want to talk a little bit about, the resource of the Native American
Oh, yeah.
spirit that we really need at this moment to help guide the future and your connection?
United States, especially the United States.
Yeah.
Because the native people are still the keepers of this place, whether anybody realizes it or not. So in my case, I'm part Cherokee. But what's really significant about that is my grandfather was my teacher, and he passed the lineage to me. So a lot of my work is coming from Cherokee wisdom. And the Cherokee and Maya people are basically very Pleiadian. Many, many people on this planet are Pleiadian.
It's 10 o'clock. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. It was
I
my
was traveling all over the place. I would ask people, where are you from? And they, especially in Bali, Indonesia, Sulawesi, a lot of countries, people just say, oh, we're from the Pleiades. And I go, hi, so am I. But as I told you once before, the biggest mistake in my life was when I went off to first grade. And the teacher asked all the children, where are you from? And I made the mistake of saying I was from the Pleiades. And I had a very hard elementary experience.
Right. But as far as the country and the Uranus return and the Native American aspect, what can we rely on there for that kind of stabilizing force in this next wave?
The native people are really holding the codes, dimensional codes, and holding the fields and the planet stable. And it's been a real battle and a real struggle, and it is a real battle and a struggle now. But they're not going to give up because that's who they are. I'm not going to give up. The
Right.
essence of who I am.
Great.
That's great.
Right.
I also
know-
have Cherokee lineage and Celtic
Are
lineage.
you are you Cherokee
Mhm.
Celtic? That's what I would have guessed.
Yeah.
So see, what happens is you have that resonance. And so finally it hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was lucky. My grandfather started teaching me when I was 3.
Yeah.
As soon as the war ended, the Second World War ended. And so I was lucky to receive that early training.
Absolutely.
Very
Wow.
lucky.
Wonderful.
So some people have some questions, right, Sheila? I know.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
I just love talking to Barbara, but go.
I know I could do that too. And I also want to honor Barbara's time as well. So does anyone have a question?
Well, is there something here from Stacy? It feels, can you see that last in the chat there?
Um,
Do you mind me asking what you do now?
that was in regards to another question.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one.
Well, anyone can raise their hand.
Sure, absolutely. Just go down to the little reactions button.
Rick was raising his hand. Can you unmute Rick?
Okay, he was physically raising his
Yeah, he was
hand. I
physically
don't
raising
see
his
him.
hand.
I'm glad you saw that.
Next to
Yes.
Cindy, up there. Do you see?
Hey, Rick, I've asked you to unmute.
Unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'm really happy to be able to participate in a Sheila and Alan and Barbara. And Barbara, I'd like to ask you, I'm specifically interested in your book on Chiron. And I'm also interested in your remarks about Sirius. You didn't go too far into how the Syrian beings are going to maybe participate and interact with us. But how would you describe how Chiron has interacted with Earth and the astrology of humanity over the last couple of years? I mean, we're kind of a wounded humanity as I see it from the last couple of years. And what does Chiron portend for 2022 for humanity and healing for everybody?
Wow,
Great
great
question.
question.
Yeah, well, Chiron is known as the wounded healer because he teaches us through wounding how to find our higher self and our soul. And Sheila is just story, like the perfect example of what I call the chironic process. People say chironic, which sounds ironic, and I don't like it at all, but I like chirotic because Chiron is very erotic, because Chiron triggers a lot of Kundalini energy. So in my Chiron book, I've got all those cycles. The Chiron cycles are very complicated, and we can't talk about it here because they vary so much for people. But basically, Sheila's story is the sort of ultimate example of a person who is really sick and really wounded because she's actually going through an initiatic breakthrough. And then finally what happened was she finally broke through and then was able to start healing herself on so many levels. It's a wonderful story. I don't even need to explain Chiron. Sheila did it.
What about the Syrians? That part of the question as far as Syrians.
Well, in my system, and we have to remember the 9-dimensional system, I'm the one who brought in that whole structure of the keepers of the dimensions. And the Syrians are the keepers of the 6th dimension, which means the Syrians are the ones who work with sacred geometry on this planet. And if you're really interested in that, Rick, you really should read Alchemy of 9 Dimensions, because the descriptions in each chapter, for instance, chapter 6 is the Syrian chapter, and you'll get a really good sense of how they work with geometry regarding megalithic monuments, regarding pyramids, regarding all of the structures, including consciousness structures, geometrical consciousness structures.
Would you say that Metatron is related to the Syrians? Are the angelic kingdoms, do they flow into the galactic civilizations? Are they completely separate in your view?
Oh no, Metatron is just one expression among many of 6-dimensional geometrical consciousness and higher consciousness forms. It's just there's many different esoteric schools, as you know. And if esoteric schools are true and accurate, then they don't contradict each other. For instance, the Alchemy of 9 Dimensions book, that material came from the Pleiadian agenda. It doesn't contradict the Kabbalah in any way whatsoever. In fact, when I brought it all in, a lot of people just thought I was just polishing up the Kabbalah and adding some information, which I wasn't. Because the 9-dimensional information is actually a different databank. So there are many, many beautiful esoteric databanks. I know you're aware of that. And they don't contradict each other. The deeper you get into it, the more you see how they're all just a piece of the puzzle. So Metatron is very much a part of that.
In 2022 and Chiron, how do you see Chiron affecting 2022?
Okay, now one of the things that Sheila and I agreed on before the show is I'm not doing explicit astrology right now. I'm promoting source because for me to answer that question, I'd really have to be up on the data bank, astrological data bank.
Okay.
Yeah, and the source, by the way, since you're interested in astrology, you obviously are, the astrology in source itself is fantastic. So I've just had to, the astrology in source explains why our world cracked in 2020. And then it moves into 2021 and starts to give a lot of information about how to put our world back together.
Is astrology in source something that you've put out?
Pardon?
Is astrology in source? Okay, gotcha. It's one of your more recent books?
It's the Revelation of the Source is the book that has the astrology in it. Revelations from.
Yeah, we're here talking
Revelation.
about
Thank you.
this trilogy, and one of the main characters in this trilogy, an Italian woman named Claudia Tagliati, is a brilliant astrologer. So astrology is part of this trilogy because you can't really understand what's going on the earth in our reality without using astrology. And all of the big boys and all of the power brokers, they all use it. We're fools not to use astrology in our reality.
Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate the time.
Hey,
Wow.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you,
Rick.
Barbara.
Well, Cindy, you look like you're a big fan of Barbara's. You had all those books. Do you have a question from all the books you've read of Barbara's? Anything you want? Like here she is right here. You can ask her. Do you have a question? Can you unmute Cindy, Sheila?
Yep, I can. I actually had, let me go ahead and get Catherine because she had
Oh,
her
okay.
hand up. And then
Okay,
Cindy, I'll
and
get
then we'll
to
go
you
back.
next, okay?
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't know if this is off topic because it's a different book that you wrote, but Astrology and the Rising of the Kundalini. Am I allowed to ask you about a little bit about that book and what?
oh, yeah, please do. And the other thing I was going to say to Sheila when she's told her story is I'll bet you she was around 41, 42, 43 years old when this happened. And I bet you it was triggered by Kundalini rising. So sure, these all go together. You have a fantastic thing behind your head. It's a wonderful thing. And
Yeah, it's a butterfly nebulous.
Isn't that beautiful? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which question, Catherine?
I'm just curious because I had a huge Kundalini awakening back in 2007, 2008. And so, whenever I see a book with Kundalini, I didn't know what happened to me, but I knew it was something amazing and wonderful. And it was 1,000 times more real than this reality. So I wasn't afraid or anything, but I was trying to figure out what happened to me. And then I came upon this word Kundalini.
So you got a copy of Astrology and Kundalini. And
well, I didn't get your book. No, I just saw this now, honestly.
Well, I would strongly suggest you get it. Yeah. It really, because it'll really show you exactly how that works. And it's really, really important to understand Kundalini and Kundalini rising. Like, for example, with Sheila, because you're lucky, Sheila, that you didn't completely scatter. That was an intense awakening. When I was in graduate school in theology with Matthew Fox, some of you guys may know Matthew Fox, I had my Uranus opposition while I was in graduate school, and I shook all the way through graduate school. I had convulsions and stuff like that, and everybody in graduate school thought I was completely nuts. There's about 80 of them, I think, out there who just think that they met this crazy woman. I don't know if they know it's me or not. And so that's the reason I wrote and Kundalini is because Kundalini rising is really intense. And and the more you understand how it works and what to do about it, the better. And that's what astrology and Kundalini is about.
Okay.
So I think since you've gone through that, you've got another transit. There's 3 transits. The third one, Rick, is Chiron Return. And that happens at age 50, 51. So there's 3 major life transits: Saturn return at age 29, 30, and then Uranus opposition between 38 and age 44. And there's tables at the end of the book that give you the timing. So you can just look.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've had 2 major ones in my lifetime. One was in 2007, 2008, and then again in 2016. And and I expect that I'll probably have another one.
You probably will. I had my first one when I was 5.5. And and so in fact, when I had a recent one where I thought it was a heart attack, and fortunately I had a great doctor. And I said to the doctor, I said, I'm suspicious. I think I'm having a Kundalini. I said, you ever heard of Kundalini? Believe it or not, he had. I had a doctor who knew about Kundalini.
Wow.
Yeah. So then we tested me, nothing wrong with me. My heart was fine, no heart attack. I was just having a great big Kundalini rising, which by the way was triggered by transits. So we all get Kundalini rising at various times, but the big one, the big Bowser is midlife crisis. That's the one that knocks people off their feet.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. That is so good. Maybe you'll be part of our Kundalini day event that we're doing at Portal to Ascension. Okay, Barbara?
I'll consider it. You know, as you know, Guru Jagat was a friend of mine, and she was
No.
of Kundalini, and I'm still just grieving the loss of Guru Jagat. I just don't get it, but I do. She's in a really high place. She's helping us.
I know. I don't get it either, but she was one of my favorite people. But
Wonderful.
yeah. But we're doing a little Kundalini event at Portal to Ascension with different people who've had experiences and many levels of this. So I'd love to invite you to be part of that.
And I'll see what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm open to a lot of stuff. It doesn't mean I can do it, but I'm open to it.
Right. Okay, Cindy, good to.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Barbara, I am so excited and grateful that you're here. You were a huge influence for me with your books back in the 80s. Here's the 3 from Beer. And then here's the other one that came after Beer. And I also didn't know that you were in publishing Barbara Marciniak's books, who are also a big influence for me. But I loved every single one of your books.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Alchemy the way you did. Alchemy is based on Pleiadian agenda, but people, if you have a choice of only one of the two, people should buy Alchemy, because what Alchemy does is Alchemy for the first half of a chapter, each chapter, it says, excuse me. Yeah, it says, this is what the Pleiadians said in the first half of the chapter. Then the second half of the chapter analyzes it scientifically. And so you really can get away with not buying Pleiadian agenda, although a lot of people love the book.
I did.
It's the only
I did. And the 9 Dimensions. I love this book.
Yeah, I consider that my most important book.
Wow.
I mean, my most important original contribution.
The Alchemy of the 9 Dimensions, that book you're saying.
Yeah, this is it.
Right.
I got it back, I guess, in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And I was very influenced by your work.
I came out in 20.
I have a strong connection to the Pleiades.
Great.
So your books were like gems to me.
Are you a dressmaker?
How did you know?
Because you've got a model behind you?
Oh, yeah. I worked in the fashion industry for many years.
Dressmaker.
And this was the
the Pleiadians dresses.
This was what I worked on in the dorms.
Yeah, there's a woman.
I actually drape on that for real, and then I painted it.
Yeah.
I got back home.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a memory from my, Fashion Institute days.
Did you have a question though, Cindy? From all the research you've done with Barbara's work?
I just want to say thank you for being here, and I really enjoyed your presentation and was very excited about you being here to see the person behind the books.
Now, since you're all closeted in and you have a lot of time on your hands and you can't go to work, get the trilogy and read the fiction. Because see, that's another thing. At a time like this is like the 1840s, before we had electricity, when people were stuck in their houses and everything was dark, if you know what I mean. And this is a time for art, enjoyment. We need painters, we need actors, we need fiction writers. We really need artists at this point. So support your artists, and I hope that people will support your dressmaking.
Oh, thanks. Well, actually, I transited into a tarot card reading after a hit and run car accident that got me into inner packaging instead of the outer packaging. But I started back with the art again at the beginning of the pandemic. I started doing these drawing of the day to
Good.
keep the light for myself and
lot of people
everybody
are
else during the time of darkness.
Yeah, a lot of people are telling me, and that's very exciting. And that's where the change will come, because people have gotten stuck in really humdrum routines for a number of years now. Now it's time to bust out.
Yeah.
Nice.
I hadn't drawn in years. In fact, I don't think I did it since the 80s.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the pandemic, it was like boom, boom, boom. You
Yeah.
know, it's like the minute I finish one, I'm ready for the next one. And it's nice that people had something to look forward to besides myself,
Yeah, good.
because they're all about, what's going on with the higher dimensions, ascension, and UFOs, and
Yeah.
all the
Mm.
different, extraterrestrial energy going on
Yeah.
to help us now.
Yeah.
That's what my drawings are all about.
Mhm.
Great. Good.
Let's see,
Thank you, Cindy.
Jacqueline, did you want to make a comment?
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm just really honored to be here tonight. And Barbara, I just so respect and honor your work, through the years, and that all you have given us, And I guess I wanted to ask if there was anything else that you would like to share with us about the Pluto return for this year. What that might.
Jacqueline, is I literally don't even know where the moon is, practically. This writing fiction and then promoting it has just been really intense. I've just had to stop everything except my family in this. So pretty much anything I'd say would be stupid. So that's not going to do anything.
I just want to thank you again for your incredible insights and wisdom and all the knowledge that you have brought in for us to build
thank
on.
you very much, and thank you for your support too, because none of this would be happening if it wasn't for all the support. We got to all really support each other. I was so happy when Alan turned up again. I hadn't seen him for like 25 years. I'm like, oh my God, there's Alan.
I know. I used to see you around Santa Fe, which was a great little collective of people. And then there you were. So I'm really happy you're back on the scene, Barbara, and you're talking about this. And, because you have so much to share. I mean, just the stuff that comes to you as astrology. I know you're not getting into astrology that much, but just your intuitive feel for it all is important. So I think you'll be back on the scene.
I'll be, yeah.
And I'm going to go to Stone next, but I also just want to say Jacqueline is one of the individuals that I also wrote about, because in addition to a walk-in, she is a hybrid with seven different DNAs.
Yes,
seven different DNA strains, and you've just written a book.
Star being in the mirror, my journey as a hybrid.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it, and I'm hoping it will support a lot of people in helping them understand, in the bigger sense, we're all hybrids, but that they can, hopefully I've written about things that will help, that will activate them, and I put a lot of light language symbols and star language symbols in my book. So, and they're symbols of joy and peace. So people will be seeing those symbols, but I'm very excited about that. So thank you, Sheila.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay, Stone.
Thank you, Barbara. It was absolutely awesome. You gave me confirmation. Every time I come in here, I'm finding a little bit more wisdom, and it's just, I'm not crazy. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your adventures and journey with me. I totally appreciate it and give you full gratitude and all of that. So thank you. I do have a couple of questions. I'm multidimensional hybrid walk-in as well. And a few other things attached to that. But when you've gone through the stages of the ninth dimensions, do you find that there is a familiar entities in each of these different dimensions. Like for me, when I see shadow beings, I'm in the dimension where these shadow beings of different types and species inhabit. Do you feel that you've been given information each time you've gone into these dimensions from different beings in set dimensions?
Yeah, in the way that I can tell which dimension I'm communicating in or visiting or dreaming with, whatever is happening, is by the quality and the type of beings that I run into. Yeah, definitely. The different dimensions, in other words, are definitely inhabited by different beings. And that's just, a lot of that's described in Alchemy of 9 Dimensions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Sure.
Awesome.
Okay. Who else do we have?
Have time for another. See, Barbara, you see you're on your iPhone. Want to unmute?
Piera. Piera, anybody? Anybody have a question here? And before we go, we'll promote the books again, of course.
And yes, definitely want to do that. And I need to share screen.
Yes, share the screen for the trilogy.
Yes.
And also share the screen for the upcoming conference that's happening this weekend.
So, Barbara, I'm going to go ahead and put your
Rick, what are you pointing to?
Pardon me?
Rick is pointing to something. Rick, you want to unmute? Can you unmute Rick? He was.
Piera has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Piera. Yeah. Wait, unmute.
She is.
Oh, there.
I just unmuted her. Hey, honey.
Hi. Thank you, Barbara. This was beautiful. This might be a bit of a complex question. Just we talk about living in 5D and what that means in that state. And what does that really entail? Does it mean that we need to really work on our shadow side and release the things that prevent us from living in that more expanded state of 5D? Is there a process? Any of your suggestions or thoughts on that?
All of the work that we do in healing, body work, past life regression, Reiki, you name it, all of it is moving us through our shadow side, and it's bringing things that are not understood within us into consciousness. And the more that we do work, personal work on ourselves, which is the real key to the whole thing we're talking about tonight. Speaking of steering your ship, look at the amount of healing that people have been doing the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, all the way through my career, the number of people who have done really hard body work and really hard mental work and emotional work, all of that is what's opening our hearts and moving us into the 5th dimension. And when your heart is really open, and I'm older than you are because, you're quite a bit, I'm almost 80. And it takes a long, long time. But the wonderful thing about it, and the thing that Alan is up there with me, I don't think he's quite that old, but you can see with older people, the people who have done their work, you can see how open they are in the heart because it just takes time. And so all of that work that you're doing is helping all of us. I think it's so important to realize that as you go through that, Piera, you're doing it for all of us. And I really, really appreciate it. And I am so appreciative for all the people, all these years who have, read my books and taken trips with me and studied and everything. Because it just, we're really doing it. It's just hard to see it because the people who are in control are such stupid fools.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah.
It is a problem. I mean, but it's coming from the degree to which we don't take responsibility ourselves.
Right.
So we
Well,
just
it's changing.
taking more responsibility.
The Aquarian age is changing that,
Yeah.
There are no mindless leaders in the Aquarian age. Everyone just needs to be the leader, right? I mean, this is our time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So anyone else have one?
Lynn, yeah, we're going to go ahead. She has a question, and then I'm going to
To
share
wrap up.
screen.
Okay. Lynn. Where's Lynn?
Where is she? Lynn?
Lynn. But thank you for taking your time, Barbara, and just hanging out with us here.
Well, this is fun. I mean, the graphics you guys have, where do you get this stuff? Jeez, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Feasting my eye all the way through on, especially yours, Sheila, in terms of geometry and galactic.
Yes.
On the other hand, the way Alan rises up and sinks into nebula. Oh, God.
Yes, it's just, yes.
So entertained. Usually, yeah, I know, I love that. Because usually when I'm on shows, I'm just like, oh boy, I'm bored, you know? And it's not bored here.
Great.
Oh, good, good. All right.
Well, wonderful.
Who are we talking to, Sheila?
Well, Lynn, but I don't see her on the screen any longer.
Yeah.
So
All right. So why don't you
I guess
just,
that was our last question. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for just a moment. And first, I want to talk about the series that we're participating in right now. We have a new one that's every Monday night. We still have our Cosmic Conversations on Thursday nights from 6 to 8. But this one will be from 6 to 8 Mountain Time. And every month, I'm going to have a different co-host. So you can see next month, I've got Michelle, then we've got Joan and Hildegard and Karen. Geraldine, Glenda, Rebecca Hardcastle, Mariana, our beloved Bridget, Barbara Lamb, and Jody. So they will be my co-hosts throughout the year. So I'm really excited to see what the rest of our programming is going to be. And then we've been promoting, as you guys know, our next walk-in conference, which really, yes, it's a walk-in conference, but the reality of it is it's so much more. It's all about conscious expansion. It's about awakening. It's about creating community and sending out that call to other people to kind of come in and to join us. And so if you have not registered, please do so at the portal. You can also register on our website at wishalliance.org. If you're not on our mailing list, please go and sign up on our contact section. And that way you'll be receiving all of our weekly updates. Make sure to put us in your contacts, because if you don't, we may go to your junk mail. But we have an exciting conference coming up. Alan has been so gracious to help conduct different promotions. And this week we have our panels we're focusing on. So our panel 1, our panel 2 will be interviewed and give us an idea of some of the things they're going to be sharing with us. We also have William Linville. And William is a walk-in who arrived, who has transcended all the lower dimensions, all of the karma of his body, and now he works with people to help them do the same. So we have an exciting week. So please
give
watch.
people the discount codes too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so please be sure to watch us on New Realities on YouTube. And then, because you're watching, if you have not signed up and you're ready to sign up now, you can use the code PTA 25. So Portal to Ascension 25, PTA 25.
Gives you
And
25% off. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you'll get that 25% off, and we will look forward to seeing you this weekend. So thank you so much. And again, Barbara, thank you. What an honor to have you here. You know, coming in as a walk-in, I bought several of your books. I was under some type of a moratorium where I really couldn't do a lot of reading. But now it's beautiful because I can start pulling everything off of the shelves and just digesting everything. I think my collective kind of wanted my truth to be my truth without kind of having influences from other people. So
Well,
thank
thank
you for.
Can you
thank you
show
for all
the,
your books.
Thank
can
you
you
for
show the
that.
revelation of the
Ruby
Sure,
Crystal.
of the
Revelation.
source, revelation from the source? Yeah, that's Barbara's latest book.
Yeah.
Yes. And that is a Inner Traditions Baron Company book.
That's right. And then up on my screen, I don't know if I'm on or not, but I'll put it on.
Yeah, can you, oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yes.
Beautiful.
From the Ruby Crystal.
That's the first in the trilogy.
And the second one is Revelations from the Aquarian Age.
There you go. And then
And
the
thank you
third
so
one.
much. And Sheila, you got a really cute dog there.
Yeah, this is my little companion. He's been with me since
Oh,
he was just a pound, 1 pound 9 ounces. So
Yeah.
we've had some ups and downs with his health, but he is on the mend. So
Right, he's on the verge of a Kundalini rising, and he'll be fine.
yes, he is. Yes,
There
he
you go.
is. So great. So thank you so much, Alan. Thank you for being a phenomenal co-host tonight. I really
Well, of
appreciate
course.
it. So grateful for everything you do to support Wish.
I think Barbara is a great resource for our community, and we'd love to do more with you, Barbara. So
Absolutely.
always, so we'll be in touch, and
Yeah.
yes, and
And
maybe
I really, really appreciate the support. Because,
Yeah.
what happens, another thing, last comment is a collective mind. And when a novel like Dan Brown, for example, when something becomes really popular, and I don't really care about money because it's not an issue for me, it's about the collective mind. And when a
Yeah.
whole lot of people start getting into the characters and getting into the stories and getting into the field, then it becomes like part of the culture itself. And so one of the ways to really bring 9-dimensional consciousness to this planet is with things like this trilogy.
Right. And it's a great act of creativity. Just, you had to go deep into yourself to bring out the characters and weave them together and move in and out of the astrology. It must have been a lot of fun to do that.
A lot of fun, and if it does well, I'll probably do a fourth one.
Oh, there you go.
So, we really have to get into it, you got to have support in that sense. Artists need support.
Okay, so how do people, where's your website again, Barbara?
Handcloud2012.com.
And
Handcloud2012.
yes, and it's in the chat. I'll copy it again.
And if I'm over in New Mexico, I'll look you up. Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yes, we'll connect. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my first order of business, family. My husband.
Oh yes. They're waiting for you for dinner.
Oh yes, I'm half an hour overdue now, and they're always conscious of that. But I love chatting with everybody.
Thanks.
Well, we've loved chatting with you. Thank you so much for being here with us, and thank all of you for coming tonight. Look forward to seeing you on Thursday. We have Gita Rose with our Cosmic Conversations, so that's going to be a good time as well. So everybody come on back on Thursday, and until then, namaste. Have a blessed week, everybody.
Thanks, Sheila. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.